holding the line together. And welcome back. The Oregon Health Authority today announced expanded testing for COVID-19. So who's included in these new guidelines? Pat Doris has the answer.
So the big development today was the Oregon Health Authority expanding its testing guidelines for COVID-19. So it said that even people without symptoms who work in group homes or are in corrections, either prisoners or prison guards, that they could get tested if there was enough testing with no symptoms. And we found yesterday there's plenty of testing available every single week. 8,000 tests go unused. So that's a big development there. And then secondly, it also expanded and lowered the criteria for people who are out dealing with the public. So like grocery workers, if they have a cough or a fever or shortness of breath, that's all it takes to get a COVID-19 test. So the state is realizing there is extra capacity right now anyway, and that as they spread this out, they'll get a better picture of just who is infected and who is well throughout the state of Oregon. It's one of those steps that they're taking as they start to think about how to reopen the economy again. So that's what happened with the OHA and expanding testing today.
Thanks, Pat. You know, testing gives important information to those deciding what life will be like moving forward. But is there a percentage of people who need to be tested in order to officially start reopening things? NBC contributor Dr. Joseph Fair told me what he thinks.
There's no way to really even set a barrier for that. This is really unprecedented territory, you know, as far as an entire nation of 330 million people being at risk for, you know, catching a potentially deadly virus. And so to be able to test that many people for both the acute test itself to tell you if you have it or not and the antibody test will cost a lot more than what we have right now included in the $4 trillion bill, and the availability, just period, the availability of those tests. It'll take us anywhere from 2 to 6 months to really get to the ramp up and availability of the test, to have it everywhere across the nation and have it very easy to do. And that's not even including the men and women power to conduct those tests. So we're a while away from getting to everyone being tested. That being said, you know, we can probably open things, I think, reasonably with the very strict adherence to social distancing guidelines enforced, and that's going to take everyone working very closely together to make sure that things like grocery stores and places where, you know, people are going to congregate and there's going to be a lot of people passing through, that strict social distancing measures are enforced in those places.
Now, a vaccine is key in the fight against coronavirus, but many of you have been asking when it will be available. I asked Dr. Kevin Ahern, a biochemistry professor at Oregon State, about what it will take to develop one.
Yeah, developing a vaccine is not a trivial process. In order to do that, we're trying to stop a critical function that a virus has during its life cycle of infection of a cell. And what we try to do is we try to specifically train the immune system to recognize and attack those essential features of that viral life cycle. Now, viruses use proteins to accomplish what they do, and the immune system is very good at recognizing structures like proteins have. So if we identify critical proteins in its life cycle that we can targets for the immune system, then we can inject those into a person and have the immune system recognize those as foreign. They will attack them and ideally stop the virus from being able to go through and do what it does. Now, that sounds very, very simple, but it's important to remember that there are a lot of great ideas that never work. So even though we may have some wonderful ideas about how to target the immune system, we actually have to test them to make sure that a vaccine that we're using actually works. So there's a fairly long series of testing that has to occur. Testing has to check for two things. One thing, that the vaccine itself is safe for people to use, and second, that the vaccine is effective. That is, of course, it's providing some protection against the virus.
All right, up next, we're going to check back in with the president of the Oregon Education Association, John Larson. Plus, is more help on the way for struggling small businesses? But first, you wanted to know how to track down your stimulus check. The answer: the IRS has a new tool on their website. Go to irs.gov and click Get My Payments. All right, now John Larson, president of the Oregon Education Association, is joining us to answer some of our questions when it comes to distance learning. So, John, how have teachers been impacted by COVID-19?
I think that the impact has been really tremendous, actually. Teachers really care about their students, and they really want to be able to help each and every one of them. And online learning was not something that teachers were trained for. They don't often have the technology themselves to be able to deliver in an online setting. So many of our students don't have access to computers, to technology, or their needs, their food insecurity, their housing insecurity. All of the issues that are evident in the classroom when they're in person are only exacerbated by distance learning. And I think that teachers are overwhelmed both with caring for their students and also trying to figure out how to do self-care.
So true. Tell me your reaction, to the decision to go with the Pass Incomplete grading system. We've heard from a lot of parents and teachers about this.
Yeah, distance learning by its very nature is inequitable because so many students don't have access to technology. They're concerned about their needs. I've heard stories from teachers. They're contacting their students who say, what we really need is food. What we really need is medical attention. There's all sorts of stories out there about students just trying to deal with their basic needs, let alone trying to learn. So any system that includes grading and credit is by its very nature inequitable. So a system that has letter grades as opposed to a passing complete really pits those who are advantaged against those who are disadvantaged. So many scholarships, so many things are based on school rank and based on your letter grade. And so when you offer a system to those students who do have access, who do have environments where it's easy for them to access education, and you give them the opportunity to earn higher grades and get higher ranks, you're automatically disadvantaging every single one of those students who don't have access. And so we think that a passing complete grading system is the most equitable given the current circumstances.
You do? Okay, that I understand. And what do you think next year will look like?
I don't think we can really guess what next year is going to look like. We're already, hearing about what happens if this stretches into the fall. But I will say this, that I know that I'm so proud of our educators and the stories that I've heard of people sharing lesson plans and sharing things that are working and talking about those things that aren't working and how we can fix those things and beginning to become more comfortable with this particular form of education. The successes that people have had trying to get a hold of their students and make sure that they're connecting with students. And so if this does stretch into the fall, I think that our educators are going to approach this with the grace and humility that they have so far. We have educators that are bringing meals to families. We have educators who are trying to help students, delivering technology to their homes. I just think people have stepped up in tremendous ways, and I really owe them a debt of gratitude.
I totally agree, John. I've interviewed so many teachers, and just the way they're able to pivot is really amazing. And thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate you sticking with us and, talking about all of this with us. Thanks again for your time.
Thank you.
The longer we stay home, the more small businesses suffer. Will there be more help for struggling business owners? Lindsay Nadrich takes a look.
The U.S. Small Business Administration processed 14 years worth of loans in less than 14 days, totaling more than $311 billion. There was such a huge need for the loans that the money ran out, and as a result, SBA isn't accepting any new loan applications. leaving thousands of small businesses out in the cold. The nearly $500 billion relief bill includes $320 billion in additional funds for the Paycheck Protection Program. The Senate passed the bill this afternoon. The House is expected to vote Thursday, and President Trump said if the bill passed, he would sign it into law.
As we are focused on the effects of the coronavirus pandemic right now, many scientists who study viruses are worried about the second wave of COVID-19. So what would that look like? Let's connect the dots. There are a lot of factors that could determine what a second or even a third wave of this coronavirus would look like. One of the biggest questions is immunity. Because this is such a new virus, we don't know right now how immunity will work. For instance, people who contract mumps are immune for life. For some types of the common cold, it only lasts about a year. If there is some immunity with COVID-19, if and when it comes back, the areas already hit hard will likely be spared, so cities on the coast like New York and Los Angeles would not see large outbreaks. According to the Mayo Clinic, you would expect the middle of America to become the new hotspot. The other factor is whether this coronavirus is seasonal, like the flu. If it behaves like influenza, it could slow down during the summer, then re-emerge in the fall. That's what happened with the Spanish flu in 1918, with devastating results in the U.S.
All right, let's turn now to our Verify team for some common questions, from Tylenol and the virus to whether a beard puts you at risk. Public health expert Dr. John Carlo has the answers.
First question comes from Mary Louise Cadigan. Can you verify a chlorine-treated pool is safe to enjoy?
We know for a fact that things like diarrheal illnesses or skin infections and things like that can be prevented by chlorine.
The Centers for Disease Control says there is no evidence that COVID-19 can be spread to humans through the use of pools, hot tubs, or spas, or water playgrounds. Proper operation, maintenance, and disinfection with chlorine or bromine should inactivate the virus that causes COVID-19. So will pool water be safe from the coronavirus? The answer is yes. Next, John Braden asks, does having facial hair make a person more susceptible to contracting COVID-19?
The facial hair is not going to make a difference to you. It's not going to trap these viruses if they're in the air. There's really no data that would show anything to that effect.
The CDC does have a blog post that advises against some types of facial hair when using a respirator mask because it gets in the way of a good seal. So that's a no on the French fork, but a yes on the Zappa. So does facial hair make you susceptible to COVID-19? The answer is no. All right, last one. Lisa Chandler asks, will ibuprofen or Advil make your symptoms worse if you have COVID-19? In mid-March, the French health minister tweeted that it could aggravate a coronavirus infection. But 3 days later, the World Health Organization stepped in to tweet, WHO does not recommend against the use of ibuprofen, and that has been the official position for over a month.
They're great medications for reducing fever, which is really going to be that symptom that's really a bad symptom for a coronavirus infection. So at this point, we're not recommending to stop taking those medications at all. And in fact, they're good medications to use in order to lessen your fever symptoms.
So does ibuprofen make COVID-19 symptoms worse? The answer to that question is no. If you've got something you want verified, send me an email.
I'm Marcella Lee. A lot of people are wearing gloves when they go out, but a common question we're hearing is, do gloves really help protect us from the coronavirus? When you wear gloves to the grocery store, to pump gas, or grab your mail, you might be lulled into a false sense of security. But there's one big problem: cross-contamination. Doctors say viruses can live on gloves. So if you touch a grocery cart that's contaminated, for instance, you can spread it to the next thing you touch, like your cell phone. Hold that up to your face, and you've exposed yourself to the coronavirus. Doctors say gloves will not help if you're not going to change your habits. Also, there's a specific way to peel off your gloves so they end up inside out to prevent germs from getting on your hands. Make sure you throw your gloves directly in the trash. And this is important. Immediately wash your hands, use a disinfectant wipe or hand sanitizer just in case your gloves had a small tear or you exposed yourself to the virus while removing them.
You know, as we protect ourselves and others by social distancing, one question is, how far can our coughs really travel. Okay, you have to watch this video. Engineering professors at Florida Atlantic University use a dummy to simulate the droplets we all create when coughing. Watch this. Then they use a laser to follow how far those droplets travel. The simulation shows a projection from a heavy cough travels 3 feet in less than 2 seconds and 6 feet in less than 15. In some cases, the cough travels up to 12 feet.
If I'm in a grocery store and somebody coughs, do I turn around and run the other direction?
Don't run the other direction, but my suggestion is avoid that area for a few minutes.
Because it's lingering in the air.
It could be lingering in the air.
And scientists say that's why it's so important to wear a mask in public to protect those around you. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We'll see you back here at 7 to answer your questions.